Counsel is a person who is willing and loves to listen to you so you can process the event, the feeling, the thoughts.
How does one counsel Israelis that are struggling emotionally, spiritually, financially, in terms of their marriages, or their relationships with their children, their families, their neighbors, and any time living in Israel, a place of a lot of spiritual warfare, but especially now in the midst of this terrible, traumatic war where the spiritual warfare is so much worse than it's ever been. And how does one care for and encourage not just young people and children that are differently abled, that have special needs, but as they grow up, who's going to care for them, minister to them, and help them get the love and the care that they need? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, getting a little emotional about our topic. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry about that, but I didn't expect to get emotional right away. But these are topics near and dear to my heart and my wife's heart. Again, this is Joel Rosenberg. I'm the co-founder and chairman of the Joshua Fund, a ministry to bless Israelis and Palestinians and others in the region in the name of Jesus, according to the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And it's a great joy to have you with us on this edition of Inside the Epicenter, a podcast which is a part of the Joshua Fund ministry to educate people who, Christians or Messianic Jews, or people who don't know the Lord from a different faith or no faith background, who are curious about what do evangelicals think and how do we see what's going on in Israel and the Arab Muslim world and the Iran and throughout what we call the epicenter, the region of the center of the earth. And so that's what this podcast is. And today is the beginning of something new. Today, my wife and co-founder of the Joshua Fund 18 years ago, Lynn Rosenberg, is going to join me, and we're going to start doing more podcasts together. They won't all be together because of scheduling and topics, but we're going to start doing more of these together. And hopefully, Lynn, Lord willing, Lynn will start doing podcasts alone with women in ministry, Israelis, Palestinians, and others. So let me shift the camera a bit and welcome you, Lynnie, onto this podcast.
Thank you.
Well, it's great to always be with you and do everything in life together, but especially anything related to the Joshua Fund. I think you've only been on this podcast one time in these last few years, which is kind of crazy, and I'll own as that was a big fail on my part. But I think we had interviewed you about your own personal testimony and your love for Israel and the neighborhood. So we're going to do more of this. I'm glad to
I look forward
sit
to
together.
It.
So we're in Washington, D.C. right now. Lynn will be in the country for 6 weeks. I've already been here 2, so I'll be here a total of 8 weeks. Why are we off the island, as it were? It's not because we're fleeing the wars in the south, in Gaza, and north in Lebanon. They are intense, and certainly in Lebanon, it's getting worse. But we're here for several reasons. One, because there's Joshua Fund board meetings and staff members to meet with, donors to meet with, churches to speak at, and lots of opportunities to share what's happening in Israel and what's happening in the region and how to be praying, how to understand what's really happening, because you're not going to get it from the mainstream media, most of the mainstream media. So that's a big part of what we're doing. We're also here visiting families. Lynn's family is in the Washington, D.C. area, so we're really grateful to be able to be here with them. Lynn just had her birthday, so we celebrated that all together. And then we'll be going out to the West, where my family is as well. So it's for you, it's the beginning of a very special and wide-ranging trip. We're going to be all over the country over the next few weeks. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Well, lots going on, and I encourage you for sort of moment-to-moment news coverage, go to allisraelnews.com. But today we've got some very special guests. They also happen to be dear friends of ours and ministry leaders that we support at the Joshua Fund, and eagerly so. So, Lynn, would you introduce our guests?
Yes, it will be a joy to do that. We always say that we have a lot of heroes in Israel and in the rest of the region. And these are 2 of our very special heroes that we love dearly. It says in Proverbs 17:17 that a friend loves at all times, and a brother and sister are born for times of adversity. So we're definitely living through a time of adversity right now. But we've been in Israel for 10 years, and they have been friends that have loved us all those times, even not in times of adversity. Lillian and Sasha Granowski are wonderful Israelis who came to Israel from the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, as newlyweds and not believers. And the Lord has given them an amazing story, which we're going to ask them a little bit about today. I love hearing it. I've heard it many times, but I will enjoy hearing it again. They did come to faith, obviously, which you'll hear about. And they have 3 children, 2 sons, and a wonderful daughter, a daughter who is a special needs adult. And that's another part of their story, how God used beautiful Liel to change their lives and redirect some of their course and to open their hearts to ministry to other people with special needs. So we'll hear a bit about that as well. And they have many wonderful talents, including they're also some of the only really qualified biblical counselors in the country of Israel, which makes them much in demand for everything from premarital counseling to crisis counseling, marriage counseling. And so it's exciting to see the way that God has multiplied their gifts and taken them in a lot of different directions. But most of all, I'm grateful that they're my friends. So thank you for being with us, Lillian and Sasha.
Thank you. It's our privilege. We used to be around the table, usually.
That's true.
First time that we see each other and have a conversation through the screen.
Yes, not sure we've ever done that. Maybe during COVID we may have done that, but it's not our norm.
It's a lot more fun to be sitting at the beach, of course.
Of course, or over a nice meal.
At the table. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're very special friends.
Well, we're so grateful for you guys. Let's just start with that topic of counseling. It's always needed. Biblical counseling, there could never be enough trained biblical counselors. There aren't that many in Israel. So that's a particular need, and it's a particular blessing that God has raised you guys up, not only to come into the kingdom, but to have this unique set of qualifications. And then biblical counselors who are trained and walking in the Spirit and so helpful and effective. They're not always a married couple, right? It may be just a man or just a woman. So to have a couple who can minister together, who can counsel together or separately as needed, that is an added bonus to the body in Israel. Again, because we don't have enough of you. May your tribe increase. Let's start, Sasha. Just why don't you talk a little bit about the regular needs of biblical counselors in normal times, and then maybe Lillian, you can pick up in a moment on the unique pressures on individuals, families, congregations in this time.
Right. Just overall kind of general picture in Israel. In the very beginning, it was not so common actually to turn and seek help from counselors. It was kind of unheard of, and maybe even looked down to. I mean, some years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So
socially uncomfortable, you mean?
Socially
uncomfortable.
That's correct. So
something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you
if
you need counselor. Yeah. I mean, the Jewish believing community was quite small. Even when we came, it was already bigger than it used to be. But when we came, it was quite small community. You can know people by face. Once we had a national conference, and it was only one hotel room. All the body of Messiah was there. So slowly we grew up. But these kind of people, pioneers of Messianic Jewish movement, they had to be, tough guys in a sense, and it was not acceptable, to show kind of weakness. So you had to deal with your problems by yourself. So again, overall, it was not acceptable, and because of that, also not so many, maybe people seek to serve in this capacity. That's how I see it.
And if not to be strong by yourself, then the only source of your strength is the Lord. And that's rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of pioneers, leaders of old generation would say who and what role of the counselor. The only counselor is Jesus Christ himself. So he's the Prince of the wisdom, he's everything. So it was not that much accepted. And taken in consideration that many Jewish people came from the Russian background, again, it was not a popular way to go. It just shows that you have some psychological problems and you better hide it than just show that you need some help. So that's probably...
Well, I guess Isaiah 9 does tell us, right? The Messiah will be called Wonderful Counselor. So he is our wonderful counselor, but just like needing a pastor, just like needing a doctor, just like needing a friend, sometimes we need people who are trained to specifically help us learn how to, first of all, identify what is the problem that we're struggling with, what's the real problem, and how is it manifesting itself, and then how do we apply Scripture to our problem, and then you can just say that, but then people who are trained know how to help a person sort of get into the rhythm of beginning to live a biblical life rather than just a carnal life or life where you're feeling like you're drowning and you don't know how to, that you need Jesus, but you're thinking, I'm not sure how to do it. So that's normal. And then just, starting a marriage and understanding what marriage is and how to be less selfish today than I was yesterday. Right? Those are normal challenges for any marriage, family.
I think people in America probably don't realize, here in America, for Christians, we have so many books about marriage, so many books about children and child raising from a Christian perspective, and then conferences.
Yeah.
You could go to all kinds of marriage conferences and seminars and everything.
Radio programs, Dr. Dobson or things
just
like this.
For family. But in Israel, like you said, Sasha, it's still, not quite a baby community, but more of a teenage community in its maturity, the body of Christ there, that this is something new to even start to realize we really need to train people in how to do their marriage in a biblical way.
Yeah. And let me just add, because I know what you mean, so I'm going to translate you for a second, and then you can correct me if I got it wrong. Obviously, there are very mature believers in Israel. We're not saying that everybody's a teenage mindset in terms of but the point of the body not being that long and that not that many, and obviously it's growing now, but means you don't have the breadth of wiser, deeper, more healthy and solid believers, the breadth of them that are specializing now in, there's not a family pastor. There's barely a pastor. Most pastors are actually working full time and then they're the pastor. If they're a full-time pastor, they probably don't have an assistant pastor. They probably don't have a youth pastor. They don't have a family, an adults pastor. The type of specialization that we just think of as normal in the United States and Canada or in other parts of the world, just within a larger church body, that doesn't exist because the biggest churches in Israel are 500, 400. So, when we think of a mega church, you're not used to go to a church of 10,000 people. There were more pastors on staff than I think there are believers in most churches in Israel. So, that's different, right? It's just different. And then all the resources. So, yeah, and Israelis have that strong, you're supposed to be chazak. You're supposed to be strong. And so you don't want to show your weaknesses or frailties because it doesn't feel like you somehow have failed as a believer rather than you're a normal believer, you're not doing so well, and you need some help. That's changing. That is changing. And you guys are seeing it changing and you're being a part of it changing. But that's normal times. All right, let's start with you, Lillian. What's different now? What are you seeing over the last 9 months?
And even to add one sentence, I remember one pastor in his 60s plus, when we did the marriage workshop for the pastors and for the leaders, he told, God gave us special grace We did everything wrong marriage-wise. We did everything wrong priorities-wise. We were not at home. We were not with the wives. We didn't take time to spend with our kids. And because we were pioneers, God gave us special grace just to sustain, to survive, and to grow. But he says, my kids are 30, 40 years old now. For them, I want to have the right priorities, the right concept of the marriage, because God's grace is limitless, but everything in its own stage of development is have proper focus and skills. And also, not every pastor, or now many pastors say that to be pastor, to be teacher, doesn't mean that they have skills of counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The different skills that needed. And so as further we go in, as more we grow, they realize that they do their job very well, teaching, discipleship, meeting with people, helping them. But in the counseling area, they need somebody to address their people and to get the help. Counsel is a person who is willing and loves to listen to you so you can process the event, the feeling, the thoughts. And when you can do it with believer, it's much better as you share the same values, faith and God's image. So what was different in the war? When war is at your doorstep, is in your country, when you experience calamities, tragedies, losses, death, wounds, together with its ugly face of reality, of hardship, of traumas, it's actually brings to the surface very important questions that every believer needs to ask. So together with terrible things that the war brought into our life, and we need to endure with this, the very good things, checking your beliefs, checking your trust issues, checking your willingness to give a control to the hands of the Lord, come to the surface. And people want to process that crucial, central things of their faith with somebody that have time, willingness, and ability to walk with them that way. So what we've seen in the counseling of individuals, families, marriages, a few issues were unique and general for everyone. Trust issues. Trust was broken on October 7th. Trust in what? We asked in the counseling session. Well, we trusted the government. Well, now we don't. We trusted the IDF and police. Now we don't. We trusted our leaders. Now we don't. So we asked them the question, so who shall you trust? And then they need to come to their own answer to that crucial question. Control issues. The main and the most common sentence was, it's terrible. I feel I'm not in control of anything, of my life, of my husband's life who fights on the front line, on our children. I used to say that we have children at our home for 18 years to give them everything so they can live and be mature. Nowadays, I cannot tell that we have them for 18 years. I shouldn't be thinking this way even before, but we don't know if we have them for one day, for 1 month, because they can be taken in captivity, they can be killed, they can be bombed, they can be traumatized. So actually the issue of control, I'm not in control, we always say good. That's a very hard feeling, but good that now we come to the terms that we understand in reality that we are not in control, because we lived with illusion that we are in control. Another issue, planning, or more correct, inability to planning. And again, we say good that we have that challenge, because, we plan, then we have an expectation, and then we are disappointed that if that doesn't happen. Can we plan and yet be dependent on God to see if that's His plan or He has a different plan, and not be disappointed with His answer because His answer just says that He has different plan than your plan A? And one more thing of things that come up in every counseling question: who is God? Less does He exist? Almost every believer in Israel knows that yes, but who is He? Does He love me? If He loves me, will He protect my husband while he's in Gaza doing his service? Will He protect my children? If not, if something happened to us, he's traumatized, the kids are depressed and lost, does He still love me? So again, we say it's a good question. The war brings calamities, war, tragedies, bring good questions to the surface, which is not easy, but necessarily to answer as a believer. And also security, prosperity, stability, is it promised? Because for some reason we think it's promised. If we are good followers of the Jesus, of Yeshua, the bad or very bad things will not happen to us. And if they do happen, during the war they happen right and left, then where is His promises? So it takes us back, what did He promise and what He didn't. So that's an essence of every counseling fears, anxieties. Why do we fear? What do we fear? What the source of the fear? Anxiety, it's a reaction to events that didn't happen. It's in your mind. It didn't happen, but you are in anxiety. What if it will happen?
Yes.
So it's a very hard things, especially when they last and there is no end. But it's also at the same time, it's a wonderful opportunity to check the core of your faith, beliefs, values, and hopefully to get stronger after processing those questions with somebody that can walk with you.
You know, we see in the Psalms, David's so open, and we often see Psalms where he is really despondent, afraid. Where is God? Lord, where are you? And yet he's also able to say, if I can go to sleep peacefully when there's 10,000 people coming to find me and kill me. So he's able to find that hope in the Lord, a peace that we would say from the New Testament, peace that passes understanding. But not just because you're a believer doesn't mean that you are experiencing that and that you know the Lord that closely. I know we want to shift in a moment because this is a whole program by itself, the counseling needs. But I also, before we shift to talking about some of the special needs ministry work that you're doing, Lynn, I just wondered if you would mention early on what happened with sort of moms that are suddenly, their husbands are now at the front or in Gaza, literally, what you guys did together.
Yeah. I would say, early on in the first few days, the first few weeks, there was this sense of shock, and then the unfolding realization of how terrible it was, and getting more and more information. And then, of course, immediately, almost immediately, so many men just being ordered to report for duty. I mean, within 24 hours, there were so many young moms that were in my Bible study group, in my church, in your congregation, who were suddenly at home with 5 children, 3 children, babies, alone, and wondering when their husbands will come back, where their husbands are exactly going, what they'll exactly be seeing. Even the first responders had to be the ones to witness the aftermath of all of that terror and the horrible things. We were praying for people from our congregation who were the first, into some of those kibbutzim, seeing these terrible things, that the Lord would protect their minds and hearts of what they were actually looking at.
Because you and I have been to a lot of these places now. I mean, early on, but all the way through, we've taken lots of delegations of evangelical leaders and others too. But we're not even seeing it as bad as it was.
No,
at the beginning.
They were the ones just arriving and seeing and sort of trying to assess
the stench of death, the look of death. Yeah.
terrible things I really can't even honestly imagine, even though I've seen video and pictures and been there months after. To have been there in those first days, I can't imagine. But yes, we immediately were having some of these moms and their kids over for meals, and just trying to just be with them, just listen to them, just try to play with the kids and give the moms chances to even be on the phones with their husbands privately. But quickly, I said to Lillian, is there any way we could do some Zoom calls with some of these moms just to answer some of their initial questions, like, how do I talk to my kids? And of course, Lillian was immediately, yes, let's do it. It doesn't need to be high tech. It doesn't need to be fancy. We just need to help these moms.
And not just for the ones that but to record it and make it available to other people throughout the country.
Right. We didn't record the video because we didn't want the moms to feel like their privacy was invaded. But it was really just the audio. Yeah. But yes, reaching out to women in my congregation, women in the Messianic school, and a prayer group. And Lillian did it in both Hebrew and also in English. And so that was a huge blessing just to me personally. I said, I need this, even though I don't have small children, just to even think about how to live with anxiety, because we were all feeling such an anxiety. And I think you put into words in one of our very first conversations, Lillian, you said to me that it feels like there's this huge cloud over the whole country and that we can't see the edges of it. Mm-hmm. And we wake up every morning with just this sort of feeling like we're just under this dark pressure and we don't know when it's going to end. Mm-hmm. And even just that, being able to say that in words, there's something comforting about being able to identify what you're experiencing. So I really appreciated that. But maybe you can share a little bit of what were some of the things we covered in those early
and then Sasha, in a moment, if you'd also share maybe some of the things you've been sharing with men who've gone into the battle, but also men who were behind either by age or infirmities or other, because they've got their own sets of issues as well.
Yeah, right.
Actually, just recently, maybe a couple days ago, somebody reached me from not your congregation where we did the Zoom, but from the other, and they told that they have heard that we did the Zoom in English. And English speakers were even in a worse situation than the Hebrew-speaking mothers, because Hebrew speakers have families here, has TV, has radio, they can process with each other, with neighbor. A lot of English speakers who anyway devoted their life to Israel, to their Israeli husbands, or who they immigrated together, they were very lonely. And so only 2 days ago, somebody called me and she told, can you share with me that Zoom link? Because I want to prepare my kids for the war with Lebanon, potentially, that will take place. So that just even lasting effect. It wasn't just for that week, but women that we met on Zoom or the conferences or on one-on-one counseling session, they all shared the same loneliness. They are not used to be with the kids for 5 months all alone when they cannot share what they go through with their beloved one, sweetheart. And the sweetheart couldn't be on the phone for many weeks or months. And so first it was like, I'm alone. I don't have someone to share the bits of information that I have strength for. I have fears if he comes back. What if he would be wounded severely, maybe post-traumatized? Anxieties for their kids because they had all kinds of anxiety, panic attacks, and I cannot really do with that something. Burnout, stress, hardship, economical. And in 2-3 months, when they got used to that terrible situation that I just described, then when their husbands come back from their service, they don't find a place in the new family structure because they were gone for so long. And if in the first weeks or months I wanted to share, then now it's such a amount of knowledge about what children went through that I can't even start to tell you. So, and unique situation about Israeli war for our listeners in America and any other countries, that you serve sometime 20 minutes from where you live. Like the Gaza and the fights, the battles of West Bank is so close to your home that after being in the service in the army, 1 month, 2 months, you come back for the weekend just to be refreshed. But you can be refreshed because you immediately need to start to help your wife because she's absolutely burned down. And there is kids who don't take your authority as a father. You are not here for 4 months. Like now you come in, you sleep one day, and then on the second day of your refreshment, you want us to behave. It's like maybe you will be gone next day. So it's a very strange, very destructive, very painful family situation for women, children, and men who are so far away from each other experience-wise. If he was 4 months in a fight, he comes back home, he doesn't want to share or cannot share what he went through with his wife. He did it with his comrades. The wife doesn't and can't share with him what has happened in the home. And they found themselves isolated, reunited, should be very joyful, but actually not. The marriage that was not stronger before the war doesn't get any stronger after the war, because when you are apart, you have all kinds of thoughts, regret. What if he would be killed and I was such a bad wife? What if I would be coming back and so it's a lot of regret. You fight or you stay with, and then you reunite and you don't do it well because you're both stressed, tired, burned out. You're not at your best. The marriage is not easy for any time. Yeah. But when you're not at your best, you're at your very least, there is no willingness or ability ability or willingness to connect. So that's what they share.
Those are great points, Lillian. I appreciate it. Sasha, just a little bit on the men's side, and how you've been trying to encourage and counsel men.
When you asked this, I my association was with some other context rather than counseling, so I'll share this one.
Okay,
I'm fine. Also one of my services. I'm one of the co-elder in Messianic congregation, and so that's the example I was trying to bring out of our Messianic congregation. Men, in the beginning of the war, like this. Sermons were mostly out of Psalms, just to comfort the people. Sometimes it was a Habakkuk, kind of very controversial, short book, but very relevant to what has happened with us, Israel, this time. So in the frame of our training program, we decided with a leader, we were thinking through how to address what's going on with us. And the decision was, let's just, open up the floor, just sharing our feelings. And that was very helpful, because somehow it was, nobody taught it in the meetings during the Shabbats we were meeting, but somehow emotional side was not touched, like personal emotional side. We were kind of somehow strongly enduring and going through this tough time, especially in the very beginning of the war. So in this, it was great. So we just kind of, zipped down, and I remember I started myself first, and then people just one after one started to share their real feelings. So basically, the idea was like, you don't have to suppress your feelings in order to be, spiritually mature, or, not to collapse, not to damage your family or your community. So there is a place and time for this. So it was a great impact. So people were really sharing their true feelings Like I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I don't have patience. I'm raging by this devastation. I feel like I cannot do anything. Like frustration completely. No matter what, it's just so big. So this kind of feeling. So for me, it was quite remarkable. So when you asked me, I just suddenly remembered this time.
Amen. Amen. This conversation is going so well. You clearly, I hope our audience they are hearing that we have two people who are experts in this. And I'm realizing this really should be like a series of shows, because like this one topic, we're like, oh, let's touch on this and touch on that. Each one of these should be shows. But for this purpose of just letting people get a sense of who you guys are, we will get to a little bit of your testimony, but we're going to have to do that in more detail soon. But let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to continue with Sasha and Lillian Granovsky, biblical counselors, but also the founders of this really important ministry to special needs families. Welcome back to the Inside the Epicenter podcast. I'm Joel Rosenberg, host and co-founder of the ministry 18 years ago with my wife, Lynn. Our verse of the day comes from Isaiah 35, verses 3 and 4. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. And this is the ministry that Sasha and Lillian have. Our prayer request for this week and this program is to be praying, please, for Sasha and Lillian, that the Lord would give them the grace, the wisdom, the physical and emotional strength to keep going. They need to be healthier and stronger than the people they're caring for by definition. They need to put their oxygen mask on first and then be able to put their oxygen mask on those that they're caring for. And that is not easy. It's not easy in any time. It's certainly not easy during 9 months of brutal, dark war and trauma. So please pray for the Granovskys. Please also pray for the ministry of Makom Belev, which you're going to find out about in a moment, but it's a ministry, to keep it short, to care for adult special needs individuals who have sort of outgrown maybe their home, and their parents may be getting older, and in time will go home and be with the Lord. Who's going to care for these young adults and then older adults? Who's going to care for them? Who's going to minister to them? Who's going to make sure that they're safe and that they are encouraged to become all that God has chosen them to become? Yes, He has sovereignly allowed them to have some limitations that others of us don't have, but that is not to say that the Lord hasn't created them very uniquely to accomplish very important blessings. And so how are they cared for as their parents get older, as they get older? And so please be praying for this ministry, that it can grow and expand, because there's quite a differently abled and special needs people in Israel, as in every country. And this is the only ministry of its kind that's actually run by believers. So that's our verse of the day, and I think it applies very well. Lynn picked this passage out specifically because of knowing Sasha and Lillian so well. So Lynn, talk to us a little bit about it, and then take us into that part of the conversation.
Sure. Well, when you first meet the Granovskys, when you hear immediately about their wonderful daughter, Liel, and we had the privilege of being in the same congregation with them when we first moved to Israel. And Liel has autism, and she's nonverbal. And yet I always describe her as a joyful butterfly. She's sort of fluttering around, just bringing joy to her surroundings. She is so dear. And because of the privilege, really, that Sasha and Lillian have been given to be her parents, and
her two brothers are pretty amazing too.
Yes, and their wives,
at loving her, and vice versa.
As Liel got older, they really became aware of the fact that there wasn't anything that they would dream of for their daughter, and so therefore, what about all the other special needs adults who are in the believing community who aren't going to have a kind of a setting or a framework that would be excellent, that would be beautiful, and that would be full of faith? There wasn't anything like that. And so I had the privilege of being Lillian's sounding board, and Sasha's as well, just hearing all their dreams and hearing what if this or what if that. And now, just a few years ago, things really started to take off. And it really began with, I think, dreaming and praying. And then we asked the Lord right from the beginning to bring teammates that would be exactly what we needed, whether it was part-time, full-time. And he brought us some
Volunteers.
people right from the beginning that helped us do a survey of the body of Messiah. So maybe you could start there. What we learned from reaching out to all the congregations, both the Arab and Jewish congregations, and about the need, really.
Yeah. One of the steps that we did, it was actually first step. We gathered around us about 30 pastors, leaders, elders, leaders of Messianic organization, and we shared our heart of establishing that Makom Balev. And they said, it sounds amazing. We're behind you, but we want to know how many people like this we have in the Messianic body. Would you please do the survey? So we will be aware. We know in our congregation, in each leader and pastor said that we have many children, a lot of teenagers and some adults, but we want to know country-wise. And so we did write the simple survey and send it to the leaders and pastors on network. I would say that maybe 1/3 of them has answered, maybe even less. Not every pastor and leader immediately and eagerly answered the survey you send on the network, but those who did answer, even from that minimum number of congregation, we came up to 37 adults. We asked them only about adults 21 plus age, not children and not teenagers. And who is aware of autism a little bit, they know it's an epidemic all over around the world. So it will be much more children, much more teenagers, and much more adults in the future. And then we said, wait. Okay, so 37 is enough. we knew it's a lot of people, but even if we want to take care, that's plenty. That's too much for the beginning of that walk. And so we found out that they live in 3 different main areas: North, Jerusalem area, and center. Actually, much more in the north of Israel and in Jerusalem area. Few in the center and maybe 2 at the south. Different disabilities. And we don't know how many years or how long will it take us to cover all the needs, because they're all different. People in a wheelchair have a different needs and different intensity of assistance. People on the autism scale have different needs. So we're just learning. That was the first step. And the very next step was actually Joshua Fund support, just believing in that vision. We knew God will provide sometime certain amount. We're pessimistic in our way of looking. Even if we're believers, we believe, but we keep our expectations quite small in order not to be. But Joshua Fund had that heart and gave us a push, the first support that allowed us to first hire the manager project. Even one person, then maybe one helper of the manager project. And a year later, again, with the support of Joshua Fund, which continues so far, but we are definitely looking for bigger spectrum of supporters, so it won't be only on one organization. And we already started the afternoon activities even during the war this year. So we need to know that even if we are gone, if we are weak, if we are sick, if we are tired, there is a community that not only will take care of those adults, but will be blessed by them. That's the central part of the vision. It's not only take care of them and assist them. Yes, they need it, but you also will be enriched and blessed if you would be part of this. just last word that we didn't want just Amuta, just our organization to do all the job. The idea was to connect the whole body of Messiah all around Israel as a partners, because we have wonderful system that been already installed of children's camp, youth camps, young people meetings, congregations. So we don't want to do it for them because it's their congregants. We want to do it with them. And I think that's what gives us enthusiasm. It's not we are alone, but we as the body of Messiah can provide it and be blessed.
Amen. Man, Sasha, would you just take a moment and first let me just say, because you've used a word, Lillian, that most people that are listening and watching don't know, Amutah. That's just an Israeli version of a nonprofit organization. So that's what she's talking about. Sasha, you want to define in English what Makom Balev means? It's a great name for the ministry.
Makom Balev. It's a little bit of play on words. Makom, it's simple. It's a place. Balev, Makom Balev, it's like, you can say it's the center, like you can say Lev Air, it's like the center of the city. Or you can also paraphrase it like a special place in your heart, like Lev, it's your heart. So it's a little bit of play on words. So you can say it's special place in your heart.
Yeah. Amen. It's a great name. Also happens to be the name of a restaurant not far from you guys that we used to love to go. And I think, I don't know if it had much influence, but it's the perfect name for this. Sasha, so in the time that we have, and I would like, again, we'll get into more on Makom Balev in the future. I think it's very important. It's also an interesting model for other ministries in other parts of the country, other parts of the world who may not have this. People who are listening to us, yes, in North America, but also in Africa and Asia, they may not have ministries like this either. And they may, I think they can learn a lot from what God is doing in and through you and your team, which has been fun to watch. And I will also note one other thing, and that is that, yes, the Joshua Fund is an enthusiastic supporter of Makom Balev, but as founders, one of the things we do is if Lynn's going to help you guys get started and serve on the board, then we recuse ourselves actually from our board of making, and even our staff, to make that decision because, we don't, I guess we don't have to. If we get involved in something, it's because we care about it and we want to help, but we just like to make sure that we have a good accountable team that's thinking, yes, this is something the Joshua Fund should be a part of. And so that's just the way the Joshua Fund works. Sasha, so we don't have that much time, but if you just would you share a little bit about the sort of the short version of the journey leaving the former Soviet Union as the Soviet Union was imploding and coming to Israel and then coming to faith? Tease us with it, because obviously we need to have you back and do a whole show about it.
Okay. That's
a tough assignment. I know. I got it, but I'm giving it to you anyway. Exactly.
You can do it.
Because you said you didn't want much time to prepare. So
looking back, it's each story, it's an amazing work of the grace of God. So as all them get, and looking back, it's just it's so obvious. Nothing to do with us. Something to do with us, but the pure work of grace, of big journey of redemption. In the very beginning, it was economical reasons. We were just married couple, living former Soviet Union, no hope in politics, no opportunities like work opportunities, job opportunities. We were kind of suggested by some our friend much older than us, came back from a visit to United States and basically said to us, I remember, he said, it's not place for you to live. You don't have to birth slave labor for this system. You must go immigrate. That's what his words, and so we're really challenged. And so we decided, to find a better place for us to live, economical reason, just to establish our young family. And we didn't have much opportunities. We had some good opportunity. Lillian happened to be Jewish, so
That's helpful.
so it's.
But actually, we wanted to immigrate to America.
We wanted to immigrate to America, but actually we had to fly. We grew up in Kazakhstan. We didn't have any U.S. embassy in Kazakhstan. We had to fly to Moscow to be interviewed in American embassy there. They basically looked to our papers and all. We went through questionnaires. They answered us, maybe, you will have chance, but it might take a long time. We don't know. We cannot promise you. But, the Gorbachev was at power. So, today is perestroika. Tomorrow is Stalin again. Who knows? We have to run. We don't have to wait for United States to give us.
And help our viewers and listeners understand, what year is this?
It's in 1990. It's still Soviet Union.
We started the process in 89. Yeah, the beginning of 89.
Because due to Lillian's Jewishness, we decided to go immediately to Israel, just to run away from Soviet Union, and then from Israel somehow we'll make it to the real promised land. For us, it was the United States. Right?
Right.
So,
I guess it's good that we didn't know you guys at the time, because we would have certainly tried to help you. But
right.
The Lord didn't want you to come to the United States. He wanted you to be in Israel.
So our kind of spiritual background, we grew up in an atheistic country, and everything was matter first and no spirit at all. I remember somehow I couldn't take it. I remember I was asking my mom that, what will happen to me after I will die? She said, don't ask this question. Nothing will happen. Okay, but it was kind of bothering me. It was not satisfactory for me that you live, die, that's it. It has to be some continuation. So that was hard desire to answer this question. We've met with Lillian, and that was the common ground. Like, she was also not satisfied with atheism, and we started our spiritual search. Didn't have much. Black market, some books, underground literature, former Soviet Union, some Eastern religion, some philosophy of Buddhism, some yoga, some this, that, maybe some old version of Bible, old version like old Russian or so. So that was our search. But before we decided to immigrate, that was quite interesting. We were going in a main square, like in Kazakhstan, Almaty, capital city, used to be. And we were shocked to see advertisement in the front of TV, how we call it, cinema, like big cinema. It was huge advertisement. It was written, Jesus movie, come and see, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. So looking back, we learned that it was Campus Crusade for Christ, the first attempts to reach the Kazakh people with gospel. So that was like evangelistic representation of Jesus, famous Jesus movie. We bought tickets, we watched this movie, liked it a lot, like it really resonated with our hearts. We even prayed in the end. If you know the movie, it goes like written prayer, you kind of pray with us. So we kind of prayed it, but
we
prayed it. Yeah. But it was like, let's put something else in our spiritual pockets. Let's keep on, looking for it.
We thought it's an end. We didn't know it's the beginning of your journey.
Right.
So we did it with joy, but that was...
So with that, we came to Israel. We immigrated. Totally foreign country. No relatives whatsoever. Everything's different. Language, culture, temperature, climate, whatever.
I remember you telling me that when you came, you were swimming in the ocean because to you it felt very warm, and all the Israelis thought you were crazy because it was cold,
Again,
cold for them.
we had to fly through Moscow. It was not direct flight from Kazakhstan. So, but when we immigrated, it was November.
It's November.
So Moscow, November, it was
-10.
It was
15.
very windy,
Yeah.
very snowy. So we were wearing our fur coats and all. So we came to Israel.
+30.
+30.
November.
So cold wind.
That's Celsius.
Celsius,
yeah.
just to be clear.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
100, yeah.
Well,
or 90.
85,
So
90.
we made it to the Mediterranean.
But maybe if it's a teaser, we will end up with the sentence that on our day 5 after immigration, we were at the Messianic congregation.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's wow. You're a good storyteller. That's you guys definitely set it up, and we will definitely have you guys back to really talk just about this. I originally had been thinking this episode would be about your testimony, but I think people need to know more about what you're doing now. And why the Joshua Fund loves you guys so much, why we love you so much, and why it's so important what you're doing. Then they'll be even more interested in your backstory, how you came to faith. So anyway, we could have done it either way, and also I just wanted to mess with you, Lillian, because you needed all this time to prepare. And I thought, well, let's just reverse exactly everything that I told her it was going to be. But you guys handled it very, very well.
They're always ready.
They're always ready to share the hope that they have in their hearts. So look, we need to close, but I want to say that one of the things I hope that when we get to heaven that I'll find out that when I visited with a small team of Campus Crusade young people to the Soviet Union in the summer of 1986, and we were in Almaty. We called it Almata at the time, but like maybe we shared the gospel with you. Maybe we gave one of you, 4 spiritual laws in Russian. I probably not, but anyway, but there
maybe at least cross paths on the road.
We were told at the time that we were the first sort of exploratory teams to even try to go to some of these Central Asian republics, because most of it's Muslim, but obviously Russians were sort of moved there. You guys are actually from Ukraine, but you were moved, your families moved there to live there.
Yeah.
And
they were
work
sent
there.
there.
Sent there, exactly. So Muslims didn't want to respond in a quick moment. You really have to build a long-term relationship. That wasn't working. But meeting with just Russians in the park, playing hacky sack, just playing frisbee or just chatting, people wanting to learn English, practice their English. That's the type of people we got to talk to. And we, of course, were arrested by the KGB twice. But that, too, is a different story for a different time. But thank you guys so much for sharing with us today. And thank you all for those of you who are watching and listening to being part of this episode and learning more about the important work that Sasha and Lillian are doing, both as biblical counselors, but also as founders of this important new ministry, caring for those with special needs and caring for their families too, because it's a great burden on the heart of somebody raising a special needs young person to think, well, what's going to happen, right? How do I care for this stewardship that God has given us as a couple? And sometimes couples don't even stick together because of the tensions. That's another story for another day. But how do I make sure that my young person is cared for by people who love Jesus, love Yeshua? If those of you who are watching or listening want to learn more about the Joshua Fund, and you can visit our website at www.joshuafund.com. Again, www.joshuafund.com. You can learn more about what we're doing to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus. And now you've learned a little bit about just 2 more of the ministries that Joshua Fund supports. And if you want to become involved prayerfully, we need that. This is a couple, obviously, that needs a lot of prayer because the people they're caring for need a lot of prayer and the Lord's mercies and blessings. And if you want to get involved financially, you can give tax deductible if you're in the United States or Canada online. You can give securely online. And there's also other information of how to give. If you want to write a check, you can go to joshuafund.com and you can hit donate to learn more. And we would encourage you to do that so that we can invest in ministries just like this. And to be, this is a healing work. God is doing something very special. Yes, there's trauma, there's hardness, But there's good news. That's where the gospel comes from. And the people, and we want to keep introducing you, Lynn and I do, to people who are doing this work on the front lines and doing it so well. So again, joshuafund.com. If you have any questions or comments about this program or other programs, or you want to make a suggestion of a program you'd like to hear, a topic you'd like to hear about in the future, you can write to us at podcast@joshuafund.net. Again, podcast@joshuafund.net. Now, I know you're thinking, you just said it's joshuafund.com. What are you talking about, joshuafund.net? Yeah, that's the difference. I can't explain it, but that's the website is joshuafund.com. But the email address is podcast@joshuafund.net. And if you're driving or you're listening to this while you're working out or washing the dishes or making dinner or whatever, feel free to just go look at the show notes and you'll get all this information. As always, we put those show notes there to fill you in, and including the names of these ministries, and you can learn more about them. Thank you so much again for listening to this episode of Inside the Epicenter. For Lynn and our board and our staff and all of our prayer partners, and for Sasha and Lillian, this is Joel Rosenberg saying thank you, and may God bless you as you bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.
I'm Joel Rosenberg. On your left, you'll find some videos we've chosen specifically for you. We look forward to partnering with you to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.